All right, everybody. Episode 2, Horses
Of Courses.
with Tinia
And Suzanna.
of Heart of Phoenix Equine Rescue. All right, guys. So we are podcasting this episode from Lexington, Kentucky. We are here because we had a couple of horses that needed to come to Haggard, and we are also picking up an Appalachian Trainer Face Off candidate from Kentucky Equine Adoption Center, which is based in Nicholasville, Kentucky. So this evening we are here at the Origin Hotel in a really cool development in Lexington. I've stayed here before. Super nice. And with that, I think we'll get right into the Appalachian Trainer Face Off and the pickup that's coming up on April 30th. Susanna's been doing the applications, so there is still plenty of time. I think the cutoff this year is April 1st to apply to compete in either the Platinum Division, which is revised for this year, Diamond Division, Whippersnapper Division, Showcase Division, and the Outlaw Division. So, Susanna, how have the applications been this year? I feel like they're up.
We've gotten more, for sure. Yeah, we've gotten more quality ones, I think. Yeah.
You seem like you really enjoy doing them.
They're tedious.
So, this year, we kind of went back to the drawing board and we tried to think of ways to make the event fit more trainers, fit trainers better, and fit the horses better, and the adopters better, just all the way around. And also, what made sense for the horses we have in the organization right now. So, we decided that we have horses that are waiting at the rescue that have already been started under saddle that just need finishing. And we started to think about what kind of horses the average adopter are looking for. And the average adopter, they want a horse that has more finished. More finished, like more than 100 days. So this will allow more adopters, I think, to be candidates for the horses in the event. So Platinum Division this year will mean a horse that's already under saddle that needs finish. Not expected to be a real complicated horse, just needs more miles.
Not totally finished, though. It's not going to
go... No, not like we're not giving you reiners.
Not the heeling
steeplechasers. Not that, but a horse with more finish.
More polished.
That left then the Diamond Division being a little more like what Platinum was last year. A horse that's expected to be an uncomplicated start. Just a basic, this horse can be handled, should be okay for the farrier, should probably load, easy to catch relatively, but just needs a start.
I bet you we end up with a Fuller in there.
There's always one that I'm like, ooh, that horse should have been an Outlaw.
Yeah. Or an Outlaw that we're like, oh, that one should have been in Diamond.
So, then the Outlaw Division, I thought giving it a name when we were sitting down talking about what do we call this division that just kind of is self-explanatory. Because saying a horse is Diamond Division made people feel like these are more valuable. These should be
it was
easier.
Confusing.
It was confusing. So, I think Outlaw tells you right off the bat, this is a complicated, difficult horse. This year, the Outlaw Division, it's going to be horses we've had a long time that maybe have been started but have been very hard, or horses that are feral, which may not really end up hard as it goes, but they're going to be difficult initially because these horses won't be halter broke, and sometimes that's a big challenge for trainers, just getting the horse handled, and then once they're handled, maybe the start's not as difficult. But those horses are going to have a much smaller pool of adopters, so that division will have the highest prize package because of the fact that the winner of that division, like we've seen in the past 2 years, horses that would potentially be Outlaw, Guinness, and then Valero, horses that didn't end up adopted. But this will have a higher award because of the fact these horses may not get a home.
Right.
And we are doing away with the cash prizes for second and third place to allow us to really kind of funnel that prize money into the champion of the division. I mean, if you win, you win, because there's the 50% portion of the adoption fee still comes back to the trainer. So that's your potential for a prize regardless. And some of the fees, like last year, the highest adoption fee I believe was Jameson, and was he $10,800 maybe?
Numbers just don't stick in my head.
Yeah. So it was a $10,000 plus adoption fee, I believe, and so. His trainer.
We had two that were high last year.
One was like $8,800,
and that one really surprised you.
It surprised me. I can't. Yeah. Was it Zion?
Was it Zion?
Maybe Zion.
I don't know. I will say though, if you're thinking about applying for the ATFO, or you have already applied for the ATFO, go ahead and get it in your head now that you've got to do the marketing. I was just talking about this with a potential trainer the other day. She was asking how you get your horses adopted at a high fee, and historically the horses that get adopted at a high fee are the ones that they have a video just about every day or a post just about every day. I was telling her, I said, it doesn't matter if your horse is playing in the water trough with his feet, post that, because people also want to know these horses' personality and not just what it looks like trotting in the arena. So that's the key to making the high fees, is to do the marketing. And it doesn't matter if it's, set up with these fancy lights like we have here today, although sometimes that's better. But you just need to make your horse have a story and a personality, and get him out there over and over and over and over again. That's one of the things that last year some of the trainers really struggled with. And I personally said it to a couple of them myself over and over and over again, and they just didn't do the marketing, and then they were really disappointed when their horse adopted at a low fee or didn't even adopt at all. No one knew the horse.
Well, and I will add to that I do think when you are able to get quality footage and video, think of that. I mean, try to do it.
Yeah.
But don't think that everything you put out has to be that kind of thing. Aim to have a good video or two. Colby O'Connor always has a stellar video, just a high. I don't know if anyone's ever topped the quality of video that Colby has put out to market the horse at the end of an event.
Kayla Patton Leg.
Kayla Patton Leg had some good video too. Hers were a little more like sit down and talk about the horse, but they certainly told the horse's story. But try to arrange to have that once. But don't wait to post until you have that. Post your basic video at least a couple of times a week. Sit down and do your shots of the horse just doing something quirky out in the field.
Sticking its tongue out. Or
anything.
Licking your hair. Whatever.
I really feel like you should be posting something every day. At least 5 times a week.
Yeah.
Make sure you're posting. Because also you're kicking yourself if you don't, because if you don't post, we don't share it, so nobody knows who you are. And this is an opportunity, like Adam Black has said, doing the Appalachian Trainer Face Off and partnering with Heart of Phoenix. And you can watch that video on our YouTube at WV Horse Rescue, where Adam shares his whole business was really built on this event in 2017, 18, 19, 20,
Because he bought a piece of property and then built a barn from scratch.
And he said, largely he attributed that to the platform that the ATFO and Heart of Phoenix gave him. So don't waste the platform. If you're not sending us content or posting content, we can't share it.
Right.
And the other thing is that be really candid and really honest about the horse. For one, we're going to know because we already kind of know the horse.
Yeah.
Don't make the horse seem better than it is. Just be very honest. People expect Heart of Phoenix to give them a really fair rundown of a horse, and we expect our trainers that are working with us to do that. And I think that's going to go into something we're going to talk about later in this segment.
Yes.
That's very kind of sad, a bunch of stories actually. So and we added the whippersnapper division for the whippersnapper. We have these babies,
a lot of babies.
People got really excited about it. I was kind of taken aback at the number of trainers that really were tagging other people and just interested in taking the babies on. And I don't have real big expectations that the babies get adopted. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. We're not going to put the babies in the adoption auction, but you will certainly be able to watch these babies go through training with adult trainers. We will allow for some older teens if they're exceptionally qualified, have done some like Mustang makeover stuff, and they have an adult trainer working with them and over them. But this is really intended for adult trainers that have already raised babies before.
Yeah, because the last time we had kid trainers and the babies,
it didn't go well,
that was Carson James jumping over the rail with a chair in his hand. That's how well that went.
Which and you know who he was going after, guys, was Gilligan.
He was going after the horse,
who was a foal that was orphaned from the mines, and we raised him at the facility at Mulligan.
And he was the first orphan that the caretakers had, and they were a little fanciful about how they dealt with him.
They did baby him, and the colts, I think, are harder too, but he was feeling himself.
He's very confident.
And now Gilligan is in the ATFO this year to be placed under saddle. So but
you know what though? Doesn't have his dangly bits anymore. And back when he was doing that, he still had his dangly bits.
His trouble puffs.
Because,
he was a year old. I like to have, I prefer to geld them at about a year old. There are plenty of people that do it earlier. So, in hindsight, probably should have had him castrated beforehand.
Okay, just so you know, we suggested strongly that he needed it done beforehand, but she likes to wait till they're a year old.
Yeah, and he was just barely, but it wasn't the time to castrate him in the middle of the event. So we've given that the young kids a try a few times, and I just think that's not for our event. So that said, there's those extra divisions, and I think this allows for more people to have a clear picture of where they fit.
It's like a buffet.
You can have
you can have
and you can do two.
You can have this dish and you can have this dish.
You can do the diamond division and you can do the outlaw division. We have posted that if you are a trainer that we think are at that level, you can do both or pick two. Pick whatever two you want.
You can have salad and steak.
Yeah. And so. So if you are listening to this and maybe you're kind of new and you didn't know much about the event, you can go to AppalachianTrainerFaceOff.com, and then of course you can go on to social medias and you can get the links you need to learn about it, whether you're interested in volunteering, adopting, potentially training, or sponsoring the event. I mean, the event costs a lot of money and it raises some money, but it really is very expensive because of the holding time of the horses. Just the vet day to update the horses as they go out to the trainers. That many horses. Make sure they're all freeze branded, microchipped. Check for lameness or anything we may have missed for any reason. It's expensive, and the trainers also are able to be sponsored throughout the event. We encourage trainers to be able to generate that kind of sponsorship that goes into the success of the event. The less money that we have to send out for farrier care, etc. It just helps us make everything work and do so, top notch. So with that said, we are going to roll into our horse health care topic for this episode. We're going to talk about deworming. And there's a lot of mixed beliefs on deworming. I think the reason I feel the way I do about it is I used to raise dairy goats. And if you know anything about goats, you'll know that parasites, it's the greatest challenge caring for goats. And I kind of carried over some of that husbandry into horse care. So I am a big believer in making sure that you do fecals, but understand that fecals don't tell you the full picture. I mean, Suzanna and I remember... real early on, she would say, the fecal egg count is 0. And
the horse clearly had worms.
And the horse would clearly, have a parasite burden. And, what I knew was that the hatching cycle, the life cycle of parasites factors in. So a fecal in and of itself one time isn't really going to give you a big picture. So you want to have the fecal egg count as part of your practice. We do a fecal on every horse that comes in. But there are many times the horse clearly is parasitic and, the egg count's 0. Well, we know that isn't accurate. So you're going to look at, obviously you can look at gum color, you can look at the membrane in the eye, you can look at the coat condition, pot-bellied appearance, and obviously you can find worms in the manure.
Which
can be
we do.
rough. Yeah.
Find
I mean, I've
spaghetti
yeah,
in the manure.
Just,
or sometimes rice.
Just, so check your manure out.
Go pick up your poo and look at it.
We will get messages from people that say, well, I've dewormed, and I'm like, well, I can tell in this photo, this horse has a heavy worm burden. It can't. I just dewormed it. I said, what'd you deworm it with? Ivermectin. Well, ivermectin has a lot of resistance. It's not a very strong, dewormer. And so I said, well, have you ever used anything stronger? No, I thought they were all the same. Well, they're not all the same, and there's resistances to most dewormers. And I don't want to see us get into the shape that the goat world is, where 50% or more of the goat crop born in South America die because the parasites are resistant to all dewormers. So
we're starting to see that, though. We're struggling.
We have seen it.
Yeah.
And then other things, like tell them your story about the scope.
Oh, the botworms.
Oh,
this is crazy. So I was hanging out with my veterinarian one day, and a scope representative was trying to sell her a scope, and so he brought the scope and he wanted her to try it out. Well, she had this polo pony that had been coughing for months, and they'd done everything to try to clear up this polo pony's coughing. And she's like, well, just for grins, let's run the scope down in her lungs. Maybe we'll find a tree growing in her lungs. Well, they ran it down her lungs, and her lungs were absolutely clear. And she said, well, now that it's dirty, let's just run it down in her stomach. They ran it down the polo pony's stomach, and there were so many botworms wriggling and jiggling embedded in the stomach of this horse. I have a picture of it.
It's the grossest.
It's so gross. And just wriggling and jiggling. And he's like, well, she can't have those. I deworm her every month. Every month, the guy who owned the polo horse was deworming her. And me and Dr. Hughes were like, you do what? So Dr. Hughes was like, well, the only way we're going to be able to kill those since you do that is to directly squirt them with liquid ivermectin. And the scope had a port in it, and we squirted the botworms with ivermectin. Then we watched them do like the Wicked Witch of the West, shrink up and shrivel and holler, I'm dying, kind of a thing. It was wild.
Yeah.
And the cough went away. The next day, the horse was not coughing anymore.
I just can't, that pictures. And
it's
forever
gross.
Embedded in my memory. But
it's popular when I share it on Facebook, though.
Wildly popular.
10,000 shares.
And so when we get in a horse, our go-to dewormer is Quest Plus. There are instances where we will need to do a power pack when Quest Plus has not been sufficient, but just a Safeguard in and of itself has very little, if any, efficacy.
But if things are really bad, we don't start off with Quest Plus, though.
No. So if a horse is very thin, or that there's an extremely high worm burden, then we're going to do something very slow, because you could kill off so many parasites. And I knew of a person who had this happen. Yeah, that not someone that we had advised to do this, but they had given a very parasitic young horse that had never had proper deworming. They gave a dewormer, and he colicked and he died. So if you suspect a very heavy burden, then we will do a Safeguard, maybe a double dose of Safeguard, then we'll do an ivermectin 7 to 10 days later, and then 7 to 10 days later do a Quest Plus. But we have run into horses, especially horses that are born on mine sites, that are feral. And it's funny, because you wouldn't think the resistance, the way the thought process, you wouldn't think they would have the resistance to dewormers or the parasites on these mine sites, why are they so resistant? Because these animals are just out there not being dewormed. But really the reason is that they get such heavy worm burdens, and their immune systems aren't great, because they are so deficient in so many minerals that they just don't have the ability to fight the parasites off as best we have been able to determine.
Well, and they turn domestic horses out there too with resistant ones. So.
Well, and that plays a factor too. But there is a tremendous amount of parasite issues found in the feral herds in West Virginia and Kentucky. And to get them actually healthy, and to get the parasite burden down to manageable or very low. I mean, the goal is never zero parasites. It's not realistic. But the goal is a very low burden to where the horse is able to thrive, do well, and have an immune system that keeps the parasites at bay so that they're not flourishing. And a good diet and a good balance of mineral and the horse having nutritionally what it needs will allow for that. And there are certainly many husbandry practices, which Suzanna will be able to talk to you more about on that. But we have seen the need to deworm with, a Quest Plus and another Quest Plus, and then still have to do a full power pack to get the horse's parasites
I feel
under
like in
control.
the past 2 years, it's really gotten harder.
And so, I mean, I'm sure there are folks that are that are PhDs in this and scientists that could probably do some research and really uncover all the science as to why. But I mean, I think we just realistically have a good idea, and I do think one thing, and we know this in goats, is the overuse of dewormer and switching and rotating dewormers, deworming when it's not necessary. And we certainly know about this in antibiotic resistance in humans and in animals. So, what my original vet used to say, use the dewormer until it quits working. Make sure that the dewormer is, so essentially don't move. We use Quest Plus unless the horse's immune system potentially can't handle it. But I don't use Quest Plus and then use something else and then something else the next time I deworm. I mean, I tend to believe I'm going to use Quest Plus on a horse unless there's a significant health concern where that's too strong. And that's what I'm going to use unless it doesn't work, rather than rotating dewormers. I don't like to rotate dewormers or routinely deworm.
Not on young foals, though. It's important that we tell them that you can't use Quest Plus on young foals.
Yes, correct. I mean, so it can't. There's a protocol with foals. And
it's different.
It is different, and you just have to ask your own vet. But what Susanna's vet has suggested is a particular protocol. So we tend to have found that to be effective and safe, and so we do follow her recommendations on that.
Because the reason being is that Quest Plus, I can't remember what it is, but it crosses the blood-brain barrier when a foal is so young, and so you can actually do brain damage to younger foals that you give Quest Plus to. But then also you have to kill off the ascarids in a certain way before you start with Quest Plus.
And then probably I would think you, Susanna, would have better feedback about like experiences on trying to just control parasites. Like if you're dumping manure on your fields, getting the manure out of the fields, feeding your hay on the ground, you're feeding pans on the ground. Those are things, at the rescue, I personally we don't feed grain on the ground. It wouldn't matter as much in a smaller setting, but certainly in a setting with 40 to 50 horses, in what can be a more crowded situation, we keep the feed's going to be up off the ground. They're not going to eat on the ground. We like it low. I mean, obviously a natural position for a horse to eat is from the ground, but when you're trying to keep from getting into deworming horses too often, feeding up off the ground, like our round bales are in feeders up off of the ground. Our hay bags are hung low when the horses don't have shoes, but they're still up off of the ground, just to try to prevent that sort of, let's not let the parasites flourish any more than they're going to. And honestly, I will say I haven't had an instance in the horse directly in the care of the rescue, not out of the foster, having a significant issue with parasites. So, I mean, it works, the process, as long as you're...
I feel like Poncho took a long time to kill off.
Yeah, Poncho was a Mustang that came into for the ATFO last year, and he was just in terrible shape when he came to us, and his parasite burden was intense, and it really did. I think
his ramped up partly because he got so stressed.
Well, and that's the other thing.
Taking him into the ATFO really set him into a tailspin.
Stress is a huge factor in parasites. It allows parasites to bloom, and and there can be the argument that the high stress animals already are disadvantaged. Maybe there's something, but a disadvantaged animal, nutritionally, stress wise, low pecking order, those are going to be your horses that will struggle. I have found more. Now, that said, there are horses And my old vet, Dr. Brown, talked about there are horses that maybe your shedders and your high carriers, your high shedders, that actually look great. And for whatever reason, that horse,
deals with
it. But there are different trains of thought on that your high shedder may not be your horse that is the disadvantaged horse, but they actually can look at them and they actually look fine. So there's a lot to it. But
worms are weird.
Worms are weird. But our go-to dewormer in most instances has been Quest Plus. I really hope that it continues to work well. I would hate to see that resistance gets to the point, because we don't have a next step.
There isn't.
As far as I know. There may be something in the pipeline I'm unaware of. And I will say, I will allow for, depending on where you live, you may have a different experience than we're having on the East Coast. I know that in dairy goats, you would hear, well, up here in this part of the country, this is still working. Well, that's great, as long as you actually are looking at condition, fecaling, and you actually know that it works.
In
good
Texas and Nevada, places where it's drier and hotter, where it bakes the worms to death, they're probably not seeing this.
They don't get baked to death in West Virginia.
They don't get baked to death.
No.
They get rained to death. If they drowned, that'd be good.
But I know that they don't. They get a little arc.
Not drowned.
Drowned.
Drowned worms.
I drowned dead worms. So that's where we are on deworming practices. I want to talk about our poor. I don't want to call her poor.
She's not poor.
No, I like her. Well, she's poor because she doesn't have a home. Our homeless little orphan Gaeta. So our adoptable horse of the month.
Speaking
Tegan was our adoptable horse of the month last month, and now she's adopted.
Speaking of orphans, I saw the dumbest thing. Somebody posted a yearling in a kill pen broker lot scheme, and they were like, oh, this fella's just an orphan here without his mama, so that they could get more money to bail him out. A yearling is not an orphan.
No, a yearling needs to have...
And Gaeta's really not an orphan either.
No, Gaeta was she's an orphan just because she doesn't have a home. I mean, she doesn't have a person, not her mother. She needs a home. So Gaeta is 13.3. She's a 13.3 hand, Rocky Mountain cross.
Still growing some.
And she came to us from a place that has often turned horses over to us in very bad shape. They tend to get their horses from broker kill pen scams, but then they end up not able to handle them because a lot of the horses will have significant medical issues. And then once this rescue would get in a crisis and they would ask us for help. And at that point, there's no money involved on our end. The horse is now just in need of rescue in a regular setting. So we have gone in and helped, and that's how Gaeta came in. She had a big mass in her mouth, in theory, potentially from embedded foxtail, and it was encapsulated, and it was big. I mean, it was probably, small, like a tennis ball size. And then her eye was crushed and clearly very painful. And I feel like there was even a third. Well, she was feral. I mean, that was the third issue. She was feral. She was emaciated, very parasitic.
Yeah.
Big tumor size, or big tumor golf ball or tennis ball size mass in her mouth and blind in an eye. So she had a lot of problems. But I really liked her.
We fixed her up now.
Yeah, I mean, I really liked her though. I thought she had a lot of try. She'd been terrorized, I'm sure, going through all the stuff that she had from this stupid sale and handler to this scammy quarantine place.
But she doesn't act terrorized because Vivian says she's very brave.
No, she's very brave. That's what I mean. She had so much try, you would have thought she would have just crumpled. And she was just from the, I got a halter on her and started leading her, got her, handled enough to go have that surgery so quick. And I mean, it was just little tiny interactions. There was no training session. And she just came along and
we had her eye removed.
Had her eye removed, had the mass removed. Nothing that's going to come back. It was just, just from lack of care.
We had the worms removed.
Got the worms out, removed the worms, the eyes, the tumor, and got her handled. Vivian's had her for a year and a half, probably, or a year. I mean, probably a year.
Maybe a year.
And she's really flourished, and, she doesn't care that she doesn't have that eye, no mind to it. And I find most one-eyed horses do not act any different. Very little, nothing dangerous, nothing to me to worry about as a rule. And especially a young horse she hadn't had sight in that eye for a very long time. Yeah. So she's under saddle now. She is gaited. She's gaited. And...
Gated Gaeta.
Gated Gaeta. She's up in Bloomery, West Virginia, and we would like to find her a home.
She's blooming in Bloomery, West Virginia.
She has.
She doesn't wear bloomers, though.
No bloomers.
No bloomers.
She
wears a blanket.
A blanket in Bloomery, but no bloomers. So you can look up Gaeta on wvhorserescue.org.
They'll never figure out how to spell it.
Gaeta. Gaeta, how she got the name, my mother-in-law's maiden name, it's an Italian name. Her maiden name is Gaeta. And so, Gaeta.
Yeah.
Gaeta. I had a goat named Gaeta.
You did?
A goat named Gaeta and
Gaeta.
If she'd been a gelding, she'd have been a gated gelding named Gaeta.
Gated gelding Gaeta. Say that 3 times really fast.
But she's adorable, and I think she's a wonderful,
really
wonderful disposition. And if you're looking for a smaller gated trail horse, I think that it wouldn't take much to have her kid friendly and just super cute, kind of stocky, honestly, kind of stocky building. But she may be a dark.
She's kind of, I don't know. Sometimes
color?
I think she looks liver. I really can't tell for sure. She's Rocky
I
Mountain
think that
color.
She's
weird.
Chocolate. I wait that there's going to be like Olivia Dixon be like, what is she talking about? I mean, I want to call her black.
She's not really black.
But she's not really black. And it's not that a nutritional change. I mean, I guess she's chocolate.
Maybe she's chocolate.
She's chocolate. Is that not a real color?
I don't know.
I should know.
Who cares?
We should know.
No, we have
should
Olivia.
know.
We don't need to know.
We'll ask Olivia.
We know lots of other things.
Our color expert is Olivia Dixon. She has a pony known as Satan Page, if any of you guys follow it.
We love her.
She is the color expert.
She is good.
So we're going to ask her when we end this podcast, and we'll let you all know next time what color Gaeta really is.
Gated Gaeta.
Gated Gaeta, chocolate. I think it's not a real color, probably. Anyhow, adorable little gal, and you can apply
I don't
Sierra.
think she can be chocolate without a flaxen mane and tail, because hers is not flaxen.
No, it is not.
I don't know.
She's the color that she is.
I'm an expert.
She's kind of the
many,
color
many
of like
things.
this part of your hair.
I'm an expert in many things, but not colors.
No. So, if you know of anybody looking for a little gated pony, she's out there. She's available.
Blooming in Bloomery.
So, I like this topic. So we have this. We're gonna, each episode we're gonna talk about some dumb thing. Some dumb thing that's been said on the interweb.
Yes.
About Heart of Phoenix or horses and us involved somehow. There's this. We did this seizure case in West Virginia a few years ago, and it went on for quite a while. I mean, it was a rough case. The conditions were pretty bad. I don't think that I felt like the outcome for all horses was excellent. But for the horses, that we took 3, one ended up colicking, and on his way to Root and Riddle, he died en route. And that was very sad. He had already been through so much. These people hogtied him in the mud and castrated him without a veterinarian, with no sedation, no pain relief, nothing.
Which is oddly what they accused us of doing.
Yeah, so they say we do that, and it's funny, people. It's funny how that works. That projection of like the crime that you've committed. No, someone else did that. Well, they have just given us fits on and off.
They've been very creative on their campaign
about not liking Heart of Phoenix, and we're the bad guys. And obviously, anytime you go into a setting and law enforcement asks for you to help them,
somebody's pissed off.
Someone's going to be mad because someone's being charged with a crime, and they're neglecting animals, and we end up being the bad guys. So we aren't. And
we didn't take them.
We don't take horses.
Take them.
We only come and help law enforcement and hold them for law enforcement in cases. And then ultimately, because counties aren't able to cover the expense, because the budgets for counties in West Virginia especially are very small, and it's hard for them to even do human-related things legally. So we end up working really hard, we cover all those costs to help the horses, and then ultimately the counties, and then the horses will be turned over, to us if the case resolves and the people are found guilty of neglect or abuse. Then the county, in disposing of or disposition of the animal, will end up signing the horses over to us, because we have carried the huge financial burden of the care of the horses, which of course is always, in some instances, hundreds of times over the value of the horse in terms of dollars. But that's, of course, why we're doing it anyway. But Suzanna calls me the other day, and she's like, "You're not going to believe what those yahoos have posted online."
Yeah.
And I said, "Well, do tell." And what did they say?
They said that Tinia Creamer was raking in all of these donation dollars on kill pin schemes so that she could go to Cracker Barrel every night and eat steak.
So, the part that is most humorous about this isn't actually the absurdity of kill pin schemes, because we don't do kill pin work, or that I'm raking in money because I'm unpaid and have remained unpaid, and we're financially reviewed independently as per the requirements of our state. So I'm not paid, but neither of those things were as funny to me or to Suzanna as that I was, well, for one, Cracker Barrel doesn't have steak.
They don't have steak. They have chicken fried steak.
But if you know me, my tastes run toward like non-chain restaurants, like I'm a foodie. But that's not even the funny part. I haven't eaten meat since I was 14 years old.
Well, now wait a minute.
I mean, meat. Like, I started eating seafood about 8 years ago, and about 6 months ago I eat chicken. But I haven't had meat, like pork or beef stock or any type of, or lamb or goat, anything like that, since I was 13 or 14 years old. I was a vegan and then a vegetarian for 17 or 18 years.
And fish.
I ate some birds and fish, and even that hurts my feelings. But there's Tinia Creamer eating some steak, and I thought, well, you've really done your research, buddy. You sure have. So
at the Cracker Barrel, which you have to beat her into going to the
Cracker Barrel.
I'm
not a Cracker Barrel girl.
I like the Cracker Barrel.
It's not, I don't dislike it. It's just I'm not going to choose. If I'm going to eat out every night, the Cracker Barrel that's not where I'm going usually. Though I did eat at Bob Evans as I was headed here earlier today.
But they don't have steak at
I don't even think they have steak at Bob Evans. Maybe they do. But anyhow, that was our...
I think they do, actually.
Steak.
I think you can get steak and eggs for breakfast
I did not have steak at Bob Evans.
Now you sound like Clinton.
I did not have a steak at that Cracker Barrel. So not for me, not my thing. But if you all ever run across... I did not
have steak relations.
No, none.
At the Cracker Barrel.
Not since I was 13 or 14 years old. But that said, that just kind of gives you a glimpse of when you try to do a good thing, and we don't just try, we literally do a fantastic thing. You have some cantankerous people, they'll say any sort of stuff about you, and I'm just like...
He was pretty funny to listen to, actually.
If you all ever run across it, I'm certainly not going to guide you to the insanity to give the guy attention.
We don't want to increase his page.
But if you ever run across it, just know, no steak for Tinia.
No kill pin schemes.
And no kill pin schemes. And I usually don't even pick Cracker Barrel. And no pay either.
No pay.
So,
it was funny.
On to, I think, the serious kind of part of this episode. This particular topic is mostly, it's covering how you end up with the wrong horse, and how you can end up with the right horse. And Suzanna has a very personal story about that. I do as well. But the story that really made this be a topic I felt we should cover is there was this sweet young girl that a trainer of ours reached out to me, not this Monday or so, almost 2 weeks ago. And she said, Tinia, this girl has moved a horse into my barn, and the horse is not in good shape, and she's been told the horse is 14 years old and that it's rideable, but there's a lot of problems here, and I would say the horse is much older, and she's been taken advantage of, and she seems to want to do the right thing, but she needs some help. Can we bring the mare down to the rescue for your vet day, because our vet comes every Monday, can we bring her down so that she can be seen? And I said, sure. This mare comes off of the trailer. Immediately I can see that she is blind, and that she's thin. She moves totally crippled, and you can tell she's a very aged horse. So our vet starts, and the girl's there, and she's very emotional about this. And you can tell, like, this point she's hopeful because she doesn't see the things that we see. And it's not her fault because, I've seen thousands of horses, and I've done this, what is now a long time. And I actually grew up going to auctions and with a grandfather that, I've seen a lot of things. So what had happened is there's this really unethical horse trader in southern West Virginia that goes to auctions, probably low-end auction as best I can tell from looking on that page, and very dishonestly represents the horses. I found the posting for this mare, and he posts them and does like an online auction himself on Facebook. And Facebook, these shouldn't be allowed, but, it seems like that's the way it works. So he has the posting up of this horse marketing her as 14 and broke, and photos, you can see she's thin, but she has a lot of tack on, has a heavy rider on her, and, beginner safe, and I forget how much money people were bidding. So then I was able to see the bidding, and this is all after the fact, after the vet has seen her and after there was an outcome. But I was able to find these bids of, $200, $250, $400, $450. So the vet's seeing this mare, and he's like, this mare's 30 years old. She's blind in both eyes. She, with flexion, could hardly stand. And she was very, very anemic. And her liver had some issues, very yellow, and her eyes very jaundiced. And so there was nothing to be done. And the vet having this conversation with this girl who had waited her whole life. This was her first horse.
She'd saved up money for it.
Saved, money. Felt like the time was now. She could board the horse. And here's the thing. So much of it bothered me. She said a vet saw this horse for her after she bought her. Didn't mention that she was 30. Didn't mention or notice that she was blind. And that mentioned that she just had a little arthritis.
Yeah.
This horse was riddled with arthritis. So here's a girl who doesn't know how to find an equine vet. She's trying to board. She's trying to get lessons. She was trying to do the right thing. And honestly, in the end, it was a great kindness to the mare because she did purchase her, bring her, have her eventually, took a month to get the right vet and the right help. But she was able to put the mare to sleep. And so the mare was no longer in pain. And that was the only decent outcome that could happen for this horse. But this girl sat with her there at the rescue, just holding her, crying for an hour after this happened. We offered to handle the body for her and to cover the cost of the euthanasia. She covered the exam cost and that sort of thing. But I thought she'd been taken so advantage of. Let's give her this grace. So she asked all these questions. She's like, how, what are you seeing? Like, how would I have known? And I thought we put a lot of information out there, but everybody doesn't think of the rescue as the place to come for guidance. And I think we've changed that over the years, but everyone hasn't heard of us and everyone doesn't have someone to go to. But it's a shame that this girl went through all of this over the course of a month, and it took her, and her seeking. It wasn't like she was resistant to help. It was sad all the way around. Just a tragedy. So obviously I let her know, honey, when you're ready for a horse, we will help you every step of the way to find a horse that will work for you, that is what we're saying that it is, and help you continue with lessons, which she is. She actually rode along with the trainer that met me on my way here today to bring a horse that we had an emergency with to also come down here to Lexington to go to Haggard. And she rode along, and I think she's very active there at the barn and trying to continue to learn. So good for her, and I'm glad that she's not so discouraged that she's never going to want another horse. But that story is what was on my mind. And then it led to Suzanna, who has a kind of a similar story. It doesn't have the tragic ending, but still just somebody not representing things right and accurate.
Right, yeah. So we were looking for my daughter a pony, and we actually tried out a pony at Heart of Phoenix who didn't work for my daughter. But we wound up with that horse also, which is how I got involved with Heart of Phoenix, which is the story that we told last time. But we went to this place that I in retrospect, it was a trader's place. And when we went to see the pony, she was actually stuffed in a stall with 4 other horses in the stall with her, with poop clear up to her knees. And they brought her out and they tacked her up, and she tacked up really nice and quiet. And we had a set time that we were going to be there, and we arrived on time. And so she tacked up nice and quiet, and she rode quiet. And ultimately we ended up buying her and taking her home, not knowing that she had been bred by something there, actually a Hoflinger. She'd been bred by a Hoflinger there. And in retrospect, they kept trying to tell us that they had to get to a birthday party and we had to be done. So they had to leave at a certain time. They kept sort of rushing us out of there. Well, I mean, the pony was pretty well behaved for both of my girls to ride. And so we did take her out of there. And when we got her home, she just wasn't quite as calm as she was there. But we kind of chalked it up to, well, maybe it's because she's in a new place. And she did wind up being a nice pony, but come to find out, she was pregnant. And when she was not pregnant anymore, she decided that she hated kids. So I guess her pregnant hormones made her like kids. And once she foaled, she was done with the children. She liked older teenagers, but not the 7-year-old. I think my daughter was 7 at the time that we bought her for. She really actually hated her when she was not pregnant anymore. And ultimately I rehomed her through Heart of Phoenix, and then later on, after raising the foal for a while, rehomed the foal through Heart of Phoenix. So that was it should have been a red flag. I should have known. I would know now, but of course you learn things as you go along, that if somebody's rushing you out the door like that there's a problem. And also, if you arrive somewhere and there's 5 horses stuffed in a stall, there might be something shady going on there too. And then, their Hoflinger studs were out back. They were behind the barn in a pen, and I didn't think anything about it, but they were clearly Hoflinger stallions back there, and apparently they'd gotten to this mare at some point, whether through the fence or in the pen together or something, because we ended up with a paint Hoflinger cross baby.
Well, and so, in my instance, when I started, before I really committed to where I'm going to have a rescue and build a rescue, I'd done some rescue back in 2009, but I purchased 3 Arabians from 3 different places. And this is not about people telling me anything that wasn't necessarily true, but it's just about when you are new and you're so eager, you make crazy decisions. So even though I didn't have people telling me things that weren't really inaccurate, I wasn't being lied to by the sellers, but it's not what I needed. I, got this 3-year-old stallion, spent a lot of money on him.
He's pretty.
He is pretty, and he's a good boy. He's a good boy, but he was a stallion, and they retained breeding rights to him because he was valuable. So here I had this stallion, and I wanted him, but I didn't really want to breed him. So I had to maintain this stallion for 3 years, or maybe 4, probably at least 3 years before they released those breeding rights. They never used them, but they retained them because that reduced his selling price for us in case they had wanted to. And I got an 18-month-old straight Egyptian Arabian filly that was just barely halter broke. And in the end, Susanna's daughter, 7 years later, started her, maybe 7 years later, started her under saddle. And she's been great, but I had no need of an unstarted 18-month-old filly.
Also, and then, she thought she was a goat because she lived on your goat mountain.
And then the other mare, conformationally, I just really didn't know. But she had this really long, wonky back. She had never been used for anything, barely could be handled, very disgruntled at the very notion of ever having a job. So none of those horses are what I needed at the time. I made it work, and the one mare passed away, but I still have both of those horses. They're my horses, and I enjoy them. But I could have made such a better decision at the time had I had guidance, and I could just really have accepted the advice. So some suggestions I would have. I mean, obviously, you'll hear a lot of people say that people drug horses. They don't drug a lot of horses. I've been to a lot of auctions. There's not a lot of drugging of the horses going on. There's some, but
there's
honestly,
a lot more drugging at horse shows.
Yes, there's a lot more drugging at horse shows. For one, like low-end traders, they don't really have access to the meds, and it's even harder.
Well, they won't now.
They won't hardly have any access now with the changes. But drugging doesn't happen a lot. What really more happens is the horse maybe isn't getting the care it needs, may not feel the best if you're in a very low-end setting. Like you're not spending a lot of money, you're in a lower-end purchase. The odds of you going to a horse trader or a seller and you having a budget of $1,500 or less, and you getting what the horse is represented to be is pretty low. I think I always circle back and say that's why I find a good rescue. Not all rescues are going to be honest. We've actually received more horses from rescues that were not honestly represented
That's true.
than from owners that have turned horses over. And for us, we're a rescue. So, I'm sorry you were dishonest to us, but we weren't expecting to hear things be represented accurately anyway. But we have had that experience. So, I think that the best thing you can do is really invest in becoming a solid horse person before you go to make a purchase, and building a network of really supportive, good, solid horse people that will help you, and they can make recommendations to you. Hey, if you're looking for a horse, maybe they adopted from Heart of Phoenix or another good rescue, Kentucky, is it Kentucky Equine Humane
Care.
There's whatever they say. I know somewhere, and I've had a great experience. And you're going to want to, in my opinion, if you're spending very much money, you're going to want to have a vet see that horse, confirm the age of the horse, do some blood work on the horse, heck, run a fecal on the horse, do some flexion. You don't have to have x-rays, do some flexion and get the feedback. If you're spending $5,000-$10,000 on the horse, now, honestly, $5,000 in the grand scheme of horses is very, very little money, but consider those things if you don't feel like you can determine those things. Obviously, I can go out and I can tell you how old the horse is, and I can watch the horse go, and I'm probably going to know whether the horse has some soundness issues, unless they're very, very minor. But
you know what we see the most, though? The thing we see the most is, I bought this horse, here's what it looked like when it came, and it'll be really freaking thin. And it was so good when I tried it out, and it was so good for the next 3 weeks. But, these people are actually feeding it, and it's gained 125 pounds, and now it's feeling a little better, and it's suddenly not so good anymore.
Or they've ridden it, they're rough, the horse has already learned that there's some intense correction so that it rides better there too, because they've already manhandled it and been mean to it, and it's gotten beat down there, not even maybe physically abused, but just learned that there's no reaction allowed.
Like learned helplessness.
Yes, learned helplessness. Then you remove the horse, and then you're like, well, I can't handle it. Now, the flip side to that, because I'm not going to demonize all horse sellers. There's good, there are people that sell horses, and they're honest, and they're great horse people. Because the flip side to this is, you don't know your skill level, and you go ride the horse when it's with a good trainer, and you watch how great that trainer does with the horse, and it's wonderful, and the horse is in good condition, and the horse is sound, and it's the age that you have been told. And then you get the horse home and it all unravels. That's your fault.
Well, and like Champagne, you rehomed Champagne that one time, and we flat out told her, both of us, don't feed this mare Sweet Feed. She's a psychopath on Sweet Feed. And she called and said, I have to return her. She's crazy. What are you feeding her? Sweet Feed. Duh.
So if you find someone that you has come highly recommended, and there are no red flags, the place is in good repair. It doesn't have to be fancy, but in good repair, the horses are in good condition, and they're not trying to sell you a horse that needs rehabbed. Don't buy a horse from someone that needs rehabbed if you're looking for your first horse or you're looking for an investment and you don't have the disposable income and property to keep that horse if it doesn't work out, because odds are it's probably not going to be what you're told. So leave that and hope that a rescue comes in that can actually see through that whole process. But if you're going to a place where they're handing you a Coggins and teeth have been done and the feet look good and the horse looks good, those are some perks right there. Well, that's a lot of boxes checked. If they try to rush you, leave. Now, I get it. People, I know there's tire kickers, and people who sell horses for a living can be good, honest people, and they don't want to sit there and nag them to death for 9 hours on a $2,500 horse.
There are people that do that.
And there are, and I
there
understand
are people
that.
Want to stay there 7 hours.
So you need to go, unless you're intensely experienced, and don't inflate your experience. Just because your pawpaw had horses and you rode on trail rides at Gatlinburg and you took 14 riding lessons, you don't know anything about horses, then that's okay. You're going to learn. But take someone who's a capable industry professional with you, who knows your real skill, and don't mark horses off your list because you want it to be 16 hands, under 4, black and white, and whatever, gelding, always a gelding.
Always a gelding.
Don't have unrealistic expectations of what you're looking for. You can find the right horse and it look totally wrong for you. And Suzanna, I think, has several good stories about that.
Yeah, I've done that. So my first horse that I wound up was the ugliest horse I've ever seen in my life. Her front legs were bow-legged, and you could drive a truck through them. And she was a draft horse, quarter horse, Tennessee walking horse cross with shark eyeballs, the ugliest, funky, weird shark eyeballs. And she was such a good horse. I mean, she was fantastic. Down the road, she developed ring bone, and when she got to where she was hobbling, I put her to sleep. And then I thought that I needed to repeat that and find the same kind of horse. And my boss asked me to ride this little bay Morgan Arabian who had been a pack horse in Colorado and turn her into a child's horse. And she had no hope of turning into a child's horse. By the time I put, a year into her, then I had kind of gotten to like her, figured out her quirks and how to operate her quirks, and she was the horse that I made because she didn't know anything about riding or guiding when I started with her. She was just tied to the horse in front of her and just followed what that horse did. And she was nothing like my first horse. Like my first horse, I'd go out there and she would come running to me, yelling at me like, "Oh, I'm so happy to see you." And the only reason why this pony comes running yelling is because it's breakfast time. Other than that, she's like, yeah, whatever. And so, I thought I needed to repeat the first horse that I got, but I made the second horse who looks and acts nothing like the first horse and is the horse that I need now, because when I had the first horse, I had a lot more time to go out in the pasture and lovey-dovey all over her, and I don't have time to go out in the pasture and lovey-dovey all over Annie Oakley, and Annie Oakley could care less. So,
yeah, so, in the journey of trying to find...
Do you have the horse that you dreamed of when you were a little girl? I dreamt of a giant black horse.
Yes, his name's Toby.
I dreamt of a giant black horse.
I dreamed of a black stallion, and I've got that black Arabian, y'all. I've never adopted from the rescue. And
you stole Gaeta.
Yeah, but Giada's still adoptable, just like nobody... I foster her, and I've had her there for about 3 years, maybe 4, but nobody seems to want to adopt her. She's adoptable. She's on the listing. If anybody wants a blind in one eye, has her eye removed, very wonky made, pacing, bossy mare that beats on other horses if they get in her space, but can't be ridden with tack.
She'd probably be a great foal raiser, actually.
She would. She would.
Really would be.
Won't carry a bit. Jars your brains out if you ride her. If anybody wants to adopt her, she is adoptable, and she is at my house for adoption as a foster. But no, so the horse that I've dreamed of is at my house right now as a foster. His name's Toby, and he's so smart and personable and beautiful. He's black Rabicano, Arabian gelding. He's about 15 hands. He's just glorious. But the truth is, I don't need another horse. And I thought about it a lot. And he's been there 2 years because I knew, at Heart of Phoenix, whether it's at my house or whatever, we're going to wait and find as best we can the trainer for the horse. And it just took 2 years for the trainer that we felt like would be best for him to say, hey, I have time. But she will ultimately take him and set an adoption fee on him, and it'll be a showcase during the ATFO, and he'll be adoptable, and it will make me sad. But he deserves.
It will make you sad.
It will make me sad. But he is. He really is a personable horse, and he wants that attention, and he wants a relationship with the person, and I don't have the time. And the truth is,
you don't have the inclination.
I don't have the inclination.
You're not a horse snuggler.
I'm not that, and I'm not going to ride much. And this horse could be somebody's real partner. So I know to let somebody else's right horse go. He's somebody's dreaming of this horse, and as much as I did dream of him, but it really was. I'll just leave that as a dream. I don't feel like I need to fulfill that dream. I've had him there for 2 years. He's beautiful. He'll find a great home. But there's so many factors. So there are ways to keep yourself from being taken advantage of. There's ways to not take advantage of a horse that isn't right for you. And there's ways you can really critically think about what you need. And I'll wrap this up to say I think that's one of the greatest parts of Heart of Phoenix. We work really hard with adopters, even if they have resistance because they think they know, to try to help them see really what's going to work for them and make sure it's a fit. And even after you take that horse home, if you start to have struggles, we are there 1,000,000%. We aren't about getting a horse out the door. I want the horse to go out the door to a home. Yes, I do. But
we want it to be able to stay there.
To stay there, and we want it to be successful. We want you to look at that horse and be like, I'm so glad that's my horse. I'm so glad I went to Heart of Phoenix. And, the truth is, if we don't have the horse that you're looking for and you're willing to wait, we will always circle back and try to help you. But we also will, if I know a good trainer has a horse for sale and that would be a better fit, I don't care to say, hey, we don't have what you're looking for, but so-and-so has a horse for sale, because it makes no difference to me if the horse is with us or somewhere else. Every horse needs a good home. And once we have a gauge of what your skill set is, and we know that this horse could be a fit over there, then go ahead and let's make that recommendation.
Well, I've gone out to a couple of adopters when they were having problems and helped them with their problems too. Or we send Nelson, or
we've sent trainers many times, and or made connections online for video chats and lessons via online, even if we can't get there.
I've made videos to show people how to fix something.
Yeah, I mean we're very
user friendly.
Yeah, having a support system behind the horse you're acquiring is a blessing. That everyone doesn't have the opportunity to have that. They have acquired horses in places where they feel like the horse is dumped on you now. Your circus, your monkeys. Well, it's our circus and all of our monkeys, and so we have
a lot of monkeys.
We do. And multiple circuses running at all different times. So we are there 100% the whole way for the life of the horse. And, honestly, we've helped people who didn't even adopt from us. How many times, well, Suzanna knows, that somebody has wanted to adopt, we would decline or didn't have what they needed, and they didn't wait, and they acquired a horse that then they couldn't handle and wanted to turn it over to us.
Yes.
So many times. I can't tell you how many horses we've acquired because somebody who applied to adopt from us got ahead of the gun and said, hey, you already found something local. Okay, well, good luck. I hope it's wonderful. 6 months later, can you take this horse? It's not what it was supposed to be.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, we if we have space, we have done that. But don't rush. It's not something to rush. It is take your time and rely on people.
Don't close your eyes either to something that doesn't fit what
has
your
yucky
list
eyeballs.
That has hooky gooky eyeballs. Buddy, I did everything with that mare too. We swam, we chased cows. She was fantastic.
Yeah. And you'd have missed out on that opportunity had you just said you're too ugly to be mine. Ugly horses need love too. Somebody will be like, there are no ugly horses, but there kind of are.
She was ugly,
but it's okay. Gaeta, all of them, like Gaeta, the one at my house. I mean, she's ugly and also kind of a wretch.
But she didn't kill your kid.
No, I mean my kid can ride her bareback, but I mean like no bit, no saddle, no nothing. Like he'll use a bareback pad, but I mean she jars your brains out with the pacing. But anyway, there's a home for most all horses, and it may just not look like what you wanted. So just don't close your eyeballs. So that's all. We are going to be up bright and early at Haggard tomorrow. We have Dorian, Dickens, and Zeta in for various different things. And we may, probably unlikely, but you never know, if we end up there a long time, we may have a little pop-up episode there. But if not, this is our February episode, and we will be back in March.
Now let's go to Cracker Barrel and get a steak.
Yeah.